Good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us on this beautiful Monday. I think it
It
is
is.
April 1st.
Monday, April
I
1st.
think it's
Yeah.
April Fool's Day, so don't get fooled, right, by all your jokes today. It's a really bad day not to have a joke.
It's all right. That's where we are. So hope everybody had a wonderful holiday yesterday, Easter holiday. If you celebrate Easter, it was a beautiful day for us. We are on short spring break vacation with our youngest daughter, and we went to a little church down the road here at Clearwater Beach, and it was a beautiful Sunday. But we're starting our Monday now, and we're going to talk about children and financial fitness and those kind of things. So
I'm Kimberly.
and I'm Zach. Sorry if you can't read our names there at the screen, or you haven't been here before. We don't know you if you're joining us for the first time on YouTube.
And if you're not joining us on YouTube, follow us, right? Follow us and subscribe to at the Daily Huddle at YouTube. So that would be amazing.
Yeah. So, as our question, why don't you read what our question
Yeah,
is?
our
'Cause
question is
it's a lot to unpack,
yeah,
as
it's
we've
pretty
said.
deep. Can our desire to provide undermine our children's financial independence and responsibility?
Mm,
That's a deep
wow.
one, right?
Yeah.
I think obviously the answer is yes. Our desire to provide for our kids can undermine their financial responsibility and their financial independence. I think the answer is absolutely, of course. So I think the question is, where's the balance, right? Like, how do we have balance for providing for our kids and also teaching them how to be financially independent and financially responsible on their own? We've been talking, all morning about what do you want to say and how do you want to say this, and what stories can we tell while we protect the innocent, right? Because obviously we have some stories through the years. But one of the ones that we wanted to start with was the farmer story we were talking about earlier.
So, and some people have probably heard this adage before. There are many different versions of it, but this one is about wealth and about families or people that create wealth or comfort, if you will. And the adage is that it's the first generation that grows the money, the second generation maintains the money, and the third generation blows the money, right? And why is that? That third generation and that second generation don't do the same thing that the first generation did. And really, it's the distance that they have and the protection or the isolation or insulation, if you will, that they've been given by their parents from hard work or from what it took to earn or grow that money to where they had it, to that comfort level. There's a video that I saw, and it was a well-produced video, but it was this farmer that looked like he was probably in his late 60s, standing out on the farm, leaned on the fence, talking to his children, and about how one day he wasn't going to be here anymore, but he really challenged his children to make their children earn what they get the same way he has made his kids earn it, that they understood the farming life. And that's
So
kind of
tell the story. That it's like tell it like you were telling me earlier on the porch.
well, yeah, I mean, he basically said, one day I won't be here, and, I've made you guys work on the farm and do everything, from, cleaning stables and all the other things that I had to do growing up, and work my way to being able to own and run the farm and do those kind of things. And I challenge you not to let your kids skip that, and not to let them jump right into the things that hard work provides, but have them go through the process of hard work. So when we talk about our kids, and what's right when, I think that's kind of what we're going to dig into a little bit. We're by no means perfect. We have spent a whole lot of time looking at these things, as a third party, as you would sit down with families and you would sit down with their assets and their goals. And it's a different seat when you're sitting there as one of the two interested parties, right? Parents or parenting children when it comes to money. There are crazy things when you dial it back that come from generational desires to repair that lack of money. The biggest one that comes to my mind is the credit card industry as we know it as a whole right now. I love you, baby boomers. My parents are baby boomers. But there are a lot of things that the baby boomers changed drastically. Everything from the disposable diaper industry was created because that the baby boomer generation demanded that, right? But the credit card industry and the credit card problem that we have as a whole was created during the baby boomers' rise to wealth and adulthood because of the desire not to be without, like the greatest generation, if you will, the depression generation. A lot of these baby boomers were like, I'm never going to live the way we lived when my parents didn't have any money. I'm gonna do this, that, and the other. So when I see the new TV, I'm gonna buy it on a credit card, right? You see the problem there. It's not that we didn't, it was the immediate gratification and the desire to appear or to feel wealth that created that industry. And the banks saw this and took full advantage of the fact that, wait a minute, we can charge people, 8, 9, 10. Now the average credit card interest rate's 20-something%. And they're going to go out to dinner because they want to go out to a nice dinner right now. By gosh, I don't want to wait until I have, $200, $300 or $50, whatever that nice dinner is for them in the bank. I don't want to spend that money. I want to go out and put it on my credit card. So that's something massive that can happen when this kind of desire to fix or improve your child's life by not having them suffer, if you will, the trials of earning or waiting or being patient, those kind of things. So that's
I
a big one.
definitely, yeah, I definitely think teaching kids and ourselves delayed gratification is important, right? If you don't have the money to buy something, then you don't buy it. If it is a huge need or an emergency or something like that, and a credit card's the only way, then do what you got to do, right? But if it's going out to dinner because you're I'm so guilty, but because you don't want to make dinner now, right? Like at 7:30 and you're like, oh, I don't want to cook anything, right? So you DoorDash or you run out and you grab something or something like that, but then you swipe a credit card and you don't have the means or just the discipline to pay it off. Obviously, maybe that's not the smartest thing to do. A couple of things I want to talk about when it comes to kids, and then we'll come back around to some of the other examples that we have as adults, and how do you give money and how do you give that financial responsibility. But growing up as a kid, I didn't have an allowance. Did you have an allowance?
I mean,
I had an allowance for like a week, and then my parents would forget, and then I'd have it like 3 weeks later, and then they'd forget, and so I didn't really have an allowance.
I think that's
I think I did that to my kids too. Like, your allowance is $3 a week, and then I'd forget to give them their $3 or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, we've done that with our kids. I know I mean, my mom was a classroom teacher and then a school administrator, and she was very much about in the classroom about lists and rewards and all those kind of things. So some of that would come home. We're going to do chores now, and you're going to earn $1 for each one of these things that you do. And the excitement and the motivation would happen almost like if any of you tried to start a new workout or tried to start a new diet. You're like, yes, I'm going to do this.
New Year's resolutions,
And then a week down the road, the nobody's checking anything off on the list and those kind of things. So yeah, I mean, parental discipline and is a big thing. So yeah, I had an allowance, and then I didn't have an allowance, kind of like you. We had checklists and chores, but the concept for kids to have a task that they understand, I do this, I get paid at an early age, helps them to kind of create that relationship with where money comes from, for sure. So.
I think we all are, Michelle. She's a textbook case of not teaching budgeting and limited funds. I think we all are at some point. Like, I think the purpose of this conversation is to know where we are, right? And to make whatever changes we can make and let them last as long as they'll last, and then change them again when we realize we've strayed off path a little and come back. And it's always that constant course correction, whether it's about money or fitness or health or mindset or anything, right? It's just constantly correcting our course through life as we realize we veered off a little. I can tell you from our kids' perspective, and again, like Zach said, we aren't perfect, and we still, our youngest is 14, our oldest is 23, so we're still in the middle of a lot of this. But in our perfect world, I think that our kids, it's funny because they have different abilities with money, right? Like
Well,
I won't
it's-
call names and point them out, but they don't watch our podcast anyway. So, and maybe I'll start calling their names. They'll be like, Mom, you
They-
can't talk about me on YouTube.
Yeah, they think we just sit and talk to our computer once a week. And, that's our.
But we failed the allowance system, totally failed the allowance system. They'd have it for a minute, not have it for a minute. But I do think we did really well, probably because we weren't very organized and structured. But for birthdays and Christmas and things like that, grandparents or whatever would give them money. And inevitably, especially when they were all for little, right? Like you can imagine the chaos in the zoo that we lived in at that time. They would lose that money always.
Lose
And so
cash.
every single time they gave them a 20 or $5 or whatever it was gone. I'm like, well, where's that money you just got? I don't know. And losing cash is painful. Like it hurts my heart. I'm like, we gotta find it. So, and then you never knew whose money was whose money, right? No, that's my 20. No, that's my 20. No, that's my 20. And so it's this whole big fight and conversation. So really, really early on, we got our kids debit cards. And just a little plug, at least from our personal experience, Capital One was amazing. And that's where they still have their debit cards. At least our younger two do, but they didn't have, I think if they had an age limit, maybe it was age 8, but they might not have had an age limit. But a lot of the other cards out there, if you guys do have kids and you are watching, I know that a lot of my friends' kids have Green Light, and that's one of the cards that they use. But it charges, and Capital One never charged. My bank wouldn't let them have a debit card until they were like 13 or 14, and honestly, in the world that we live in now, swiping and understanding how to manage that money and manage their checking account and do all that stuff was really important. And I knew whose money was whose, so
Oh,
they
right.
would, so that particular checking account system, we have a master account, and then their accounts obviously come off of ours, but they're their own individual accounts. So they have their own mobile app and their own login and their own debit card. And if they give me their 20, then I can just pull 20 from my account and give it to them, so that's kind of how we manage that. And I think it really helped. I think it helped them understand about money and understand about the not credit card system, but definitely the way we pay today, right? People don't typically use cash anymore. And it understood, it allowed them to manage how they spent that, and they could not, overdraw their account. And, they had to look at it to see how much they had in. Unfortunately, we're not in the days of check registers anymore where I can tell you they don't balance their checking accounts, right? But they do at least log in to make sure they have money before they make a purchase. But now that's where the birthday money goes and the Christmas money goes. And they, all of them have gone to summer camp in Tennessee for like 4 weeks every summer. And at summer camp every year, they've been an aide. And so they have to set the table every day for lunch. But by doing that, they get $400, right? So they go to camp and they get $100 a week for helping set up, and they put that money into their checking account, and they use that through the years on things that they want. I will tell you that it's funny now that they have their own money and I can see how much money they have. It's funny to have them ask for something and I'm like, no, you can pay for that, right? You can pay for that now. And it's your money, right? And they're like, I don't want to get my nails done if I have to pay for it. I want you to pay for it. So it's funny there's a big difference between their money and our money, what they're willing to spend of theirs and what they're willing to spend of ours.
Yeah, that's usually our quick answer to something, even if it's as much as, hey, I want, Raising Cane's chicken fingers for dinner, and we don't want it. And they're like, if you want it, we're on the way by, we'll stop in, but you're going to pay for it, or you can eat with us, and that's usually, okay, fine, I'll eat whatever you're going to fix. So, but yeah, I mean, I think that the understanding and the concept of money and where it comes from is something that we don't talk to kids a lot about. A lot of us, I know from our perspective, we expect that they understand that, and then they will feel it. Now, I will say that Kimberly talked about our kids being different with money. And you guys on here, or if you're watching, I'm sure you remember there was a big economic situation in 2008 that changed a lot of things. And Kimberly and I got into the mortgage business in 2002, and it was going gangbusters. And then you remember what happened in the Big Short in
The
2008.
lights went off.
The light switch went off overnight. And so our older two kids were, probably over provided for with, things when they were at the ages they didn't remember. But then when they got into the formidable ages where all their memories about relationships with money, which we've talked about before, were formulated, those were years where we were, trying to figure out how not to make them feel that. And I think they did. I know it's funny still, my oldest will order from the right side of the menu, but not the wrong way. You hear about people and the right side of the menu is the prices. If you don't think about that, that's not what the actual entree is. It's how much it costs. But we've have some friends that order from the right side of the menu when they go on dates because they want the most expensive thing on the menu. That's not what she does. She's more worried about what what it costs. And then we have our younger ones that are aware. They're not, selfish, and they don't order the most, but they order what they want. They look on the description of the entrees about those kind of things. So just little nuances like that about, what kids have gone through, what they've been exposed to, our modeling is about 90%, 80 to 90% of where they get their money habits. And our words are about 10% of that. And mostly because we don't use them. We don't talk to them about that in that educational way.
Talk about the saving, spending, sharing concept, and
yeah, I think
what we were talking about earlier.
That's a big piece when it comes to earning income.
And just because we're talking about kids, like your kids can be older too, right? It doesn't have to be little kids. It can be teenagers or older kids or even adult children or
Sure.
yourselves or whatever. I think all of this is applicable.
Yeah, so one of the things, and we're in the process of putting together a class for newlyweds or new parents or whatever for this kind of stuff from our business perspective. So that a lot of these things we've kind of been putting together over time. But and so if we're jumping around, that's why there's so much. This is it's a whole class worth at least.
Actually, we just jump around.
But anyway, one of the things when you have young kids and they earn money, let's say they earn a $5 allowance for doing something. One of the tricks to teach them about saving, spending, and sharing is what those are the three pots of money that we want them to have. You can do it visually where they have jars. I'm not a fan of jars of cash like we talked about before, but if you pay them in a $5 bill, instead of giving them a $5 bill, give them 5 ones and explain to them the fact that you should put one of those dollars away to save. You should put 3 of those dollars in your jar for your needs or wants right now. And you should put one of those dollars in another jar that's to share, that's to give or to do something else with. So whether it's tithing to the church or whether it's given to a charity, whatever that is, to get them in that giving mindset, spirit, understanding of giving back. There's another layer of that I've seen. I think it's a Dave Ramsey thing where he actually talks about taxation also, which when you're getting cash paid for cutting lawns like I used to when I was growing up or whatever, and I didn't have to pay taxes on that, didn't make enough or whatever else. But you don't want to lose the sharing pot to sharing with the government, right? We want to make sure they understand those pieces too. But I mean, it's just teaching concepts like that.
So talk about obviously I know your lawn business story, but talk about that. I mean, I had a job when I was younger, in high school. But you were always a little budding entrepreneur in high school, right?
Well,
but they didn't just give it to you. So talk about
no, I had I always had a desire to buy things and want things, and my mom and stepdad both being
that's the same
classroom teachers. Yeah, it is. I mean, I like things. But I learned early on, that what things cost. And when I wanted something that was expensive, I got into radio controlled cars and building them when I was a kid, and I wanted to fix those, wanted to buy nicer ones, nicer pieces. And so I had to come up with a way. And so I had my mom and stepdad pay me for cutting our lawn at home. And so they had push mower and the old beat up weed eater and all that kind of stuff. And I would go out and do that and I would get paid. And then and then I realized that I had all the neighbors around, and a lot of them didn't have kids my age, or they had a lawn business that was coming in, or saw them out there cutting their lawns. And so I went around and made some flyers, printed up a bunch of flyers, stuck them in the mailboxes. Probably can't do that now, but anyway, I stick them on the door, a little baggie or whatever, however, and spread the word that I would, come over and give you a price for your lawn. I was obviously a 12, 13-year-old kid at this point walking with a push mower. So my radius was limited. But that business grew to where I had, I think, 10 lawns, then 15 lawns that I cut on a weekly or biweekly basis. And I realized that I could grow and expand from that perspective. Then after I wore out my parents' equipment that they use for their lawn and cutting everyone else's, I needed new equipment. And so when I was,
You probably wanted new.
well, yeah, but I needed something that was more efficient and those kind of things. So they loaned me the money to buy a new lawnmower and then this business, and I had to pay them back for that. So that was my first situation of, I didn't have any real skin in the game from an equipment perspective because I was just using the lawnmower that was free, right? But it was theirs. So anyway, we replaced that, and I was able to earn and then pay that back. And I kind of learned a little bit about how business worked from that perspective. I think anything like that where we can take finance on the grand scale and make it a microcosm that makes sense for kids, where they can make mistakes and have those lessons without having the major issues or hiccups that they would have if they had those lessons down the road. So I'd love to, open up for comments.
Before we open it up, I just want to finish our little chat on a bigger idea and a bigger concept, and how we pass our money from one generation to the next to our children, right? So if we have money, some kids won't ever have to worry about this, right? Some parents won't ever have to worry about this, but there are people that have plenty of money, right? And you hear that the generation that receives it all blows it because they don't know how they earned it, right? So one way that people are managing that, if you will, I guess from the grave, is through their trusts, right? So the trust is going to have that money, and maybe they get at 21, maybe they get enough to cover just living expenses, whatever that is. But then after that, when do they get access to all of it? Maybe immediately, maybe never. Maybe at age 25, then you start giving them more, right? Because they're now an adult, a little more responsible, hopefully, right? But I've seen a lot of people through the years that they say, hey, listen, we're not going to open everything and just dump it at on you until maybe significantly later. You're not going to have access to all of it, but I will match you $1 for every dollar you earn. So if you earn 50,000, the trust can give you 50,000. Now you're at 100. If you earn 100,000, the trust can give you 100,000. Now you're at 200. So at least they're having to work and earn that money that's coming out of that account. It's not just something that's just given to them because it's their birthright. They have to earn it. So it makes them respect it more and manage it better and control it better, right?
Yep. I mean, it's a tool. We talk a lot about paying for college, and we'll wrap up with this from that. I love this one. It's an eye opener. We've talked about this on the Daily Huddle a couple times, but when kids want to go to college, ours included, and money needs to be borrowed or checks need to be paid for things that aren't covered under under grants or aid or those kind of things. So if you don't have scholarships for it, you got to pay for it, right? So you borrow money, or in a lot of cases, parents want to pay for it. So what we tell them is, you borrow the money, you pay for it. When you graduate and you get that diploma, then we'll either pay your loans off, or we'll take the payments on for those loans if we can't pay your loans off in a lump sum, or if we choose not to. But that means that if they don't graduate, then they have money that they've borrowed that they are going to now have to pay back themselves. So just making sure as a parent that you can manage what you want to. If you write checks for it every term, and they decide to only go for 2 terms, you've just lost that money. You haven't gotten anything for the investment. So anyway, there's so many of those things. Let's go ahead and go back to gallery view and let's see if anybody's got any comments.
Yeah,
questions.
I'd love to hear stories or comments or questions if you guys have any.
Something that's worked for you or not worked for you, or
you wish you'd done. I have a lot of I wish I had done, right?
Yeah, a lot of them. So anybody hear anything? Go ahead.
Yeah, something fun that I did with my kids once, going shopping. When you go to the grocery store, oh, I want this, I want that, I want that. I gave them each $10. And I said, okay, you guys pick whatever you want. This is your budget. And I gave them each $10 cash. And 2 of them buddied up and got something together that was more expensive. And then the other 2 each got something of their own. Yeah. So that was how I dealt with I want at the grocery store.
I think it's a great idea.
Entering into business partnerships early on so they can realize that purchasing power. I like it. I like it.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
great.
One of my children is extremely frugal, and his wife is extremely frugal too. So they're doing very well financially. They're sound on a stable footing. And my daughter was just a spendthrift. Money would burn a hole in her pocket. It was like dropping some water on a hot stove. It was gone. But she learned from her brother, and she consults with him about her finances, and he gives her very wise counsel. So peer counseling has really worked in our family.
Yeah.
I think that's definitely great examples. One of the things that I wanted to talk about that we didn't talk about is, or maybe we didn't talk about it long enough, is letting yourself or letting your kids feel that discomfort for a minute. Like we've had friends and people that we know that they can't afford to buy a concert ticket and pay their bills, right? So they'll buy the concert ticket and then they'll say, I need help with my bills, and their parents will come in and save them. And I've seen it over and over and over and over and over. And I have clients that I'm talking to them about their just doing their financial inventory, and I'm like, all right, well, tell me about this. Well, this account is just set aside for my kids in case they have an emergency and I need to help them with a car payment or something like that. And I'm like, what? Because kids at that moment, they're adults. And I'm not saying don't help your kids. I'm sure that we'll have opportunities to help ours and requests to help ours, as they get older and through the years. But it's also important to make them have a little discomfort sometimes. You can't save them from everything, or then they'll never learn.
I read an article the other day that it's not at all, and we've seen this with talking to clients, it's not at all abnormal for people in their 30s and sometimes even in their 40s to still be on some form of their parents' support. To whether it's a
car insurance,
a cell phone bill, yeah, like some sort
used
of
to be Netflix sharing. Netflix got a little smarter,
Netflix
right?
killed that, so you gotta have your own logins now. So, but guys, again, I hope that you got some value out of this. There's a lot to think about, and whether you're in that phase of life or you have kids that are moving into that phase of life, having their first kids or whatever else. It's very interesting to think about what we do, our modeling, what we say, and then how intentional we are about that. There's a whole level of depth to that. So, anybody have anything they want to say before we sign off?
Yeah, I was gonna say I have adult kids, and I've heard all that you guys said here. Paying for concert before they pay the bill. Um, you know, like this weekend I end up paying for a haircut. You know, so and they are 20s. My kids are in the 20s, so I'm seeing this thing very very live. So I'm looking forward to your. So you guys gonna do a course or some? Yeah, I definitely want to put them in front of you guys. And I recall you guys were going to Maui, so I think you've been back. So I think I need to schedule some time with you guys.
Awesome.
So definitely, I guess after this call, I think I got your number.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you got mine. So
Yep.
let's schedule something because I think I need to an overall of my situation.
Well, we would love to. Absolutely. And that's how it starts, right? It's just let's unpack it all, see where we are, and make a plan to go forward. And like we said earlier, we're not perfect. You guys aren't perfect. The world isn't perfect. But as long as we just have that constant course correction in life, then we'll be a little straighter, as far as where we're supposed to be. So well, we appreciate you joining us today from our beautiful little hotel room in Clearwater, Florida. It's pretty and sunny out here, as spring break should be. But as we go today, remember to love, laugh out loud, stress less, eat mostly plant-based, right? Get your veggies, give. Take your $5 and put them into ones and give some of your money and your time and your energy. Sleep, move, definitely check yourself before you wreck yourself, because that could be an issue. And also subscribe and follow us on the Daily Huddle at YouTube if you don't already. Thanks for joining us today, and we will see you tomorrow, same time, same place on the Daily Huddle. Bye, guys.